hey, listen, you ready for this? Selling the way that a buyer wants to be sold to, trust and storytelling. If we constantly launch tennis balls at people's heads. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Sales Circle podcast. My name is Rob Spence, your host, an internationally renowned sales trainer, sales author, sales coach, and of course, the host here of the Sales Circle podcast. And welcome. I do thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. What we've noticed in recent weeks, and please don't think we're not noting it at all, there's a lot more of you listening. There are a lot more of you watching. And for that, I want to say a massive, massive thank you. Whether you are watching this as a sales trainer, a salesperson, maybe you could be watching it as a sales trainer, who knows? But whether you're watching it as a salesperson, an entrepreneur, a BDM, an SDR, whether you are watching it as a CEO, a founder, a solopreneur, whatever you are, right? If you want to improve your sales, this podcast is for you. As you know by now, each episode is approximately half an hour long, give or take. We talk about common themes. We talk about things in sales. We talk about latest trends. We talk about industry news. We talk a little bit also about motivation. We talk a little bit about skill set and mindset. My idea being, and it's bloody simple when you think about it, you drive to work, you listen to the podcast, you've got something that you can use that day to help you improve your sales. So thank you so much for tuning in. As I said, your increased viewership, your increased listenership, your increased, subscribers, you're not going unnoticed. I do thank you. Of course, it goes without saying, if you haven't hit that like button or that follow button or that subscribe, do it now. Today, you might be looking at the title of this podcast thinking, what on earth is the tennis ball theory? What are you talking about, Rob? What do tennis balls have to do with sales? And allow me in this next section, if I may, introduce the tennis ball theory to you. When I authored my first book, Relationship Selling, conveniently placed behind me, in my opinion, one of the best things I wrote about in here, and it was sort of, I remember when I got the idea, and I'll share that with you in a minute, was something that I call the tennis ball theory, located on page 71 for those of you that have got the book. I believe, if memory serves me correct, this theory popped into my head when I was cycling to work. I used to cycle a lot to work. You probably can't tell now. But I used to cycle, sort of 8 or 10 miles to work, 8, 10 miles back. And obviously, I love that time because that allowed me good thinking time. And at the time, I was thinking a lot about ideas for the book. And if memory serves me correct, the whole book was going to be called The Tennis Ball Theory. I thought that this idea was revolutionary. As I've matured and as I've become a bit more experienced, I probably wouldn't say it's revolutionary, but the tennis ball theory is a good way to look at how salespeople, in my opinion, should be looking to sell and how actually buyers want to be sold to. So we do have some statistics to share with you. We've got some ideas, we've got some stories and some quotes that kind of help highlight my point. But let me talk a bit more about this tennis ball theory. Now, as budgets align organization, I've not got a tennis ball. So I'm going to have to use a ping pong ball, I'm afraid. Many of you have actually asked what this jug is, and maybe we should clip this up for social media. This jug personifies the importance of cold calling and to keep going. Now, when we're cold calling, and we'll try not to make this too much of a focus, for those of you listening, you probably don't know what I'm holding. I'm holding a jug with loads of ping pong balls in it, right? The idea being is if we're cold calling, if we're doing some prospecting, if we're trying to find our next customer, it's like this, right? We're just getting empty ping pong balls, nothing exciting, nothing's happening. And that's why people give up. That's why people stop. That's why people can't be bothered. My argument is this. If I told you that within this jug, there was a golden ball worth tens of thousands of pounds, right? And you could get it out of the jug. The only prerequisite is you had to get them out one by one, and you didn't know which one was which. You'd keep going, right? You'd keep going until you find this, the golden ball. It's the same with prospecting, but maybe that's a different story for a different day. Let's use this ping pong ball here as the tennis ball. Salespeople over the years have had a bad rap, haven't they? Bad reputation. People are scared of salespeople because they're over pushy, overzealous, too fierce, too harsh. And what salespeople sometimes do when they're being too pushy is they push people away, which I think we spoke a lot about in last week's episode also. My theory around the tennis ball theory is this, is whenever we're trying to sell anything, picture this ball here. That's the thing that we're trying to sell. If without warning, without due cause, without knowing if you're ready for it, I throw it as hard as I can at your head, right? There's a couple of things that you're going to do. Some of you out there will naturally catch it because you're great at sports. Some of you will duck, you dodge, you dive out of the way, similar to the 5 Ds of dodgeball, right? Some of you will get clobbered straight in the head, straight in the face, straight in the torso, straight in the nether regions. Is that a nice experience for you? Absolutely not. You will dislike me, you'll dislike the product or service, you'll walk away, you'll be upset, you'll be angered and scared, whatever. And that's what a lot of salespeople do. They've got their product or service and they throw it as hard as they can without warning to anyone. Oh, you, ah. And this is my whole argument with the dangers of AI and automation when it comes to sales. People are just throwing tennis balls at people's faces, bang, 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 right? And it's not a nice experience for anyone. In my opinion, the best salespeople in the world, they throw the ball up. They make the prospect aware of the ball. They make sure that the prospect wants the ball. And what they do is when they feel that the prospect is ready to catch the ball, they'll say, hey, listen, you ready for this? They throw it. And what happens is if I were to throw a ball at you directly, and I throw it probably underarm with a bit less force, the likelihood is you're going to put your hands out and you're going to try and catch it, right? And that's the theory behind the tennis ball theory. If we force our sales or our products or our service at someone, we're going to hit them. They're going to get annoyed. They're going to get angry. Those barriers come up. And then what happens? We move on to the next one. And all we're doing when we're sending LinkedIn messages, emails, whatever, we just throw in that. This is going to look hilarious when Jack's editing this up. You're throwing the ball just at people and no one wants it. Yeah, of course, once in a while someone will catch it and go, yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. But actually, if we speak to people, get them primed, get them ready, warn them about the ball, tell them all the reasons why they should want the ball and throw it upwards like that, someone's going to catch it, aren't they? Someone's going to reach out and catch that ball. So why am I sharing this with you? Well, there's a number of reasons. My main reason is this. I believe as a sales trainer and a sales coach that we as salespeople are doing our reputation a disservice. We're doing our customers a disservice if we constantly launch tennis balls at people's heads. Please remember that that's rhetoric, that's metaphoric. Do not do that. If we allow our customer to buy and allow our customer the chance to buy from us, more people are going to be catching those balls and wanting to buy from us. So in a nutshell, that's my theory. But what do the statistics say? So it's one good thing having a theory, right? It's no different to science, physics, biology, whatever. But we've got to have a theory. And of course, we've got to have some ways in which we can throw the ball up instead of throwing it at someone's head. So I've got a statistic here, a study or a report from HubSpot, so a world-leading authority on sales and marketing, and of course, a great CRM system. If you are looking for a good CRM system, check the links below. We've got a great deal going with Monday.com at the minute that you're going to love. But their reports say that 69% of buyers say they're more likely to purchase from a salesperson who listens to their needs and provides information rather than pushing a hard sell. So 69% of buyers, that I'm no mathematician, that's, just over 2/3, is it? 2/3, or is it 2/3? I don't know. Just over 2/3, I think. They want to buy from people who listen to their needs and provides relevant information rather than pushing a hard sell. That underlines the need to not throw tennis balls at people's heads, but to throw the ball upwards when those buyers are primed and ready. Let's look at a LinkedIn State of Sales report. Now, this one's 2022, so a few years old now. But they go on to say that 89% of buyers are more likely to engage with salespeople they perceive as trusted advisors who share insights and stories rather than just pitching products. I believe we've shared that quote or that statistic before. 89% of buyers are more likely to engage with salespeople they perceive as trusted advisors. And actually, that goes on for us to think more about our personal brand, consultative selling, and the reason in which we should develop relationships instead of just pushing the hard sell. And what about this study here from Stanford University? This is a great one, I think, and we're going to talk about this in a second. This Stanford University study suggests that people are 22 times more likely to remember a fact when it is embedded in a story. So people are 22 more times more likely to remember a fact when it is embedded in a story. 22 times is a huge, absolutely huge increase. And that takes me onto how we can perhaps use some little tools, some little tips, some little tricks to stop forcing things down people's necks, but actually throwing that ball up to allow people to catch. So I guess to some degree it's all well and good. Rob, yeah, I hear what you're saying. We shouldn't be, forcing sales upon people. We shouldn't be too pushy. We shouldn't be overzealous. People don't want it. But how do we fix that? What do we do differently? And I think really there's kind of, to some degree, there's a majority of things, right? There's three key things. I believe that, first of all, we should develop relationships and understand the buyer's needs and wants and desires. We could expand that out into questioning, into rapport building, into the psychology around influence and persuasion. However, if we are trying to sell to someone, is it not easier for us to sell to that person if we know the ways and the reasons why they want to be sold to, so we can communicate that in the same way? If you're a fan of any of my podcasts or any of my work, I love a football analogy, right? Think of your buyer, just in this instance, as a striker. Okay, strikers are all shapes and sizes and all ilks, right? Over the years, we've seen, if you're a Leicester City fan, the likes of Big Stevie Howard, to some degree, you could argue Les Ferdinand. We've seen Marco Ulloa. Trying to think of some sort of other, Peter Crouch. You could label as one for sure. We've all seen those strikers who are big, maybe muscular, but 100% tall. Are they the fastest on the pitch? No, they're not the fastest. Can they hold the ball up? Absolutely yes. Can they head the ball? Absolutely yes. So with that in mind, when we're trying to play a ball out to that striker, is it more beneficial to play the ball to feet with their back to goal so they can hold it up for the wingers and the attacking midfielders to run onto? Probably. Can we try and get past the last man and put a crossing for them? Absolutely. Do we want to play the ball in behind on the floor for that person to chase? Probably not. They're too slow. They're not going to get anywhere, right? Whereas if you're playing a nippy striker, maybe a Michael Owen back in the day, a Jamie Vardy, of course, like a Salah, trying to think of someone else who's nippy, to be fair. Rooney back in the day as well, to some degree. These guys who were fast, who wanted it. Haaland as well at times. These guys who had got the pace, who'd got the legs. Of course, from time to time, they're happy to take it to the feet. They're happy to have it in the air. But actually, you look at Jamie Vardy, a lot of his goals were scored by playing that ball in behind. He'd run on, pounce and score. It's the same with the buyer. If our buyer wants to buy in a certain way, it's much easier for us to try and sell it to them in that certain way. And this is where a lot of businesses get a bit screwed up. They go, no. Our sales process is we sell it this way. This is the pitch my sales director told me to use because he's been in the business 34 years. And back 34 years ago, this pitch worked. So this is what we're going to do. There's no deviances. If the person's not ready to buy that way, then screw them. They're not worth our time. But actually, if we adapt that way of thinking, we get better results. We know that trust is massive, both in sales and in persuasion. So what can we do as salespeople to become more trustworthy? Of course, in an interpersonal situation, we know the body language, we know the relationships, we know the rapport, we know that questioning techniques, active listening can build a great way to develop trust. But actually, the quickest way for salespeople to do this is through personal brand and through their personal reputation, through their personal authority. Remember, people buy from people. And I think actually I've got a quote that underlines that. I do. Zig Ziglar, a great sales trainer, a great sales author. Zig Ziglar says, you don't build a business, you build people. And then people build the business. which in my opinion is a great way to sort of really highlight the fact that this, personality and relationships really far outweigh pushy tactics. And, there's loads of quotes like that. We buy from people we know, like, and trust. We all know that we buy from the same brand sometimes because we know, like, and trust them. Sometimes that could be from the influencer that sits behind the scenes in the CEO seat or some form of leadership and so on and so forth. But trust in sales is absolutely massive. And remember that statistic I shared with you earlier. A LinkedIn State of Sales report said that 89% of buyers are more likely to engage if they are perceived as trusted advisors. So actually, if we switch our personal branding to more of a consultative selling approach, then my goodness, are we on something good? And finally, I think this is massive in sales. And I'm going to have to share an example with you because it kind of highlights my point a little bit. Storytelling in sales is incredible. Is an incredible tool and should be utilized. Remember that statistic? People are 22 more times more likely to remember a fact if it's embedded in a story. And actually, I have no doubt that I've said some things today, maybe on previous podcasts, where it's just a statistic, where it's just a statement of fact. And it's boring. You've lost it. It's gone out of your mind. But if I were to kind of share that in a story, then you're going to listen. And in fact, I don't want to turn this religious. If you look at, I hope I'm allowed to say this. I hope it's not sacrilegious sacrilegious. I don't know. In any way, but you look at Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ did a lot of his teachings through parables, which were stories. Jesus Christ didn't just say, "Hey, look, you should only." I'm just trying to think of one of his parables. You should only preach to those who are ready to be listened to. He said, he told that whole story about planting the seeds in the ready to go ground and how the seeds in the rocky ground didn't grow and how the seeds in the sandy ground didn't grow or whatever it was. He says, he used parables as a way of storytelling and a way to get you engaged and enticed. Of course, maybe we should do a full episode on storytelling and how we as salespeople can tell more stories. In fact, actually, let's do one better. Maybe you're an expert in storytelling. Maybe you're an expert in creative messaging. Let's get you on the podcast. Let's sit you down for an interview. Let's see what you can bring to the table. Allow me to share with you a story. I was at a networking event just yesterday at the time of recording. And at this networking event, it's a great networking event. And every week, a member gets the chance to stand up on stage and they get to have a 3-minute sort of, they call it a blatant plug. Okay, so it's their chance to stand up, talk about their business, talk about what they're doing, talk about who they can help, and so on and so forth. This chap came up on stage and, full transparency, in the nicest way possible, his speech, his conversation was boring. I'm sorry to say it was boring. What he was trying to say was quite fascinating. He was a management consultant, a management trainer, and he helps managers and leaders become better managers and leaders, which is very important. I can't tell you his name. I can't tell you his company name. If I saw him in a room again, I could recognize him. I can't really tell you the people he's helped. I can't tell you the problems that he truly fixes. All I know is he helps people with management training and management and leadership training. I think that that's because his way of telling the story was very monotonous, was very boring. It was missed. It was lost. It was lost in a crowd. And I want you to kind of think back to times where you've been sat in a pitch, in a presentation, in a meeting, and people aren't telling stories. But then I want you to think about a time when someone's told you a story. Maybe it's one of the stories that I've shared with you today. Surely they become more memorable. Surely they become more recognizable. And I think that's the point I'm trying to get to. You're 22 more times likely to remember a fact if it's been heard through a story. So because I've waffled a little bit there, let's try and get this back to the tennis ball theory. If we're trying to get someone to catch that ball, we should tell the story about the product or the service, about how we can help, maybe previous people that we've helped, maybe previous case studies. That's then talking about the product or service that gives that person the chance to catch the ball, to open their hands to grab hold of it. Remember that selling the way that a buyer wants to be sold to, trust and storytelling are absolutely crucial. Just as a reminder, I own a world-renowned sales and marketing agency with multiple awards for generating leads, inquiries, bookings, and sales. If you are a sales manager or a business owner and you need more sales, and perhaps you don't have a sales team yet, perhaps you don't have the budget for a sales team yet, perhaps you do have a sales team but they need some additional support, I'd love to hear from you. We've increased the sales of businesses of all shapes and all sizes. Everyone from multi-billion-dollar companies based in the UAE, massive, massive money, right through to the local electrician. If you need more sales, if you need more business, then please do get in touch. So just to help elevate my point finally, before we kind of come on to the closing parts of the podcast, and just to forewarn you, I've got no listeners' questions today. No listener questions today. Simply because there's been a fair few sent through recently, and I'm going to save them up for a big question and answer episode in a few weeks. Just as a reminder though, if you've got any sales questions that you want to ask, maybe you're having issues with your sales team, maybe you need some help on a certain prospect, maybe there's an objection you keep hearing, maybe you're struggling with opening people up on a cold call, whatever it is, I want to hear from you and I want to help you. Just simply email the question into not How I Failed in Business, that's my other podcast, quick cheeky plug for that I guess, to thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, my name is Rob Spence, or of course find The Sales Circle Podcast on any social media platform and just send me a comment or a message. So look, I did jot down a couple of ideas to kind of showcase why being pushy in sales can be detrimental and how you can turn that around. So just imagine a scenario where a salesperson, instead of pressuring a hesitant client to buy a software subscription, shares a personal anecdote about how the product solved a problem they faced in their own life, or sometimes another client's life. It could be, missing deadlines due to poor organization. That then creates that relation point, right? That becomes something relatable. That allows the client to ask questions, and then they're not necessarily buying it, but they could potentially also recommend it to others. It shows actually how sometimes that storytelling will break down barriers, build connections, and build trust and everything else in between. And of course, if some of you may sell B2B, some of you may sell B2C. Let's look at, car sales. What if a car salesperson, instead of rattling off features such as, and they ask about, they say, oh, it's got heated seats, it's got this, that, and the other. What if they say or ask a customer about their dream road trip, perhaps? That person could weave the car's benefits into that narrative into that story, hey, listen, with this, car's fuel efficiency, or with this battery mileage, you're 100% going to get to Scandinavia. I don't know where that came from. The customer buys not necessarily because of the specs, but because through storytelling, you're allowed to dream and you're allowed to imagine things in a little bit more detail. So just remember, when you are selling, and maybe you are driving into the office today, or maybe you're about to just drive into your next sales meeting, instead of forcing things down your customer's throat, instead of throwing that tennis ball at someone's head, right, in a very aggressive manner, why don't you give the customer the chance to catch it? Why don't you use storytelling, use trust, use relationships, and give your buyer the opportunity to catch it? If you try that, I have no doubt you'll see an increase in your conversion rates. And just before we finally wrap up today's episode, I guess the only book we can recommend today, I know we've recommended it before, is one of my very own books, Relationship Selling, by me. Now, some eagle-eyed viewers out there or eagle-eyed listeners will pick up the fact that the book is written under the name Robert Spence. I am Rob Spence. Believe it or not, we're the same person. There's multiples of reasons why I chose Robert Spence, and that's probably a different story for a different day. But look, this is the first book I authored. Full transparency, when I look back now, there's definitely some weaknesses within the book, and I have got plans to create a second version. This book was written 2017. Wow, very nearly 10 years ago. How scary is that? But it's a great book. It's gone on to sell all over the globe. It's sold thousands of copies everywhere across the globe, and I still get people reaching out to me day by day with good reviews on Amazon as well. Relationship Selling was a book I put together to help people achieve everything that they deserve. Okay, so tell you what, I'll read some of the blurb. It says, we are all salespeople. That's the big thing it says there, because we are, right? No matter what line of work you're in, you are a salesperson. Every single day, you will need to sell yourself, whether you're going for a job interview, asking for a pay rise from your boss, or even going on a romantic date. You have to persuade others to give you what you truly deserve. Relationship selling is a straight talking guide on how to become a better you, how to increase your sales, how to build and develop strong business and personal relationships, and how to get more from each and every single day. It dives headfirst into the most profitable sales techniques used by millions of sales professionals around the globe, allowing you the chance to learn what it takes to increase your commission check month after month. Look, it's a simple read. I'll be honest. It's 109 pages long. It's not the biggest book in the world with some simple techniques, but please do give it a read. It's quite cost effective on Amazon as we speak. I think you can pick up a copy now for £5 or £6, give or take. So do give it a read. Of course, there's a couple of ways you can buy it. Obviously, just search for Robert Spence or Relationship Selling on Amazon, or just check out the show notes below and you'll see a link that will take you directly to a link where you can grab both. And that takes us to the end of another episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I say this so much. I need to stop saying it. This episode has flown by. They always do. I sit back. I've got a monitor to the side of the camera for those of you watching on YouTube. And obviously that shows me the time recording. It always gets to 10 minutes and I'm like, gosh, have we got enough content here to fill out a full episode? Maybe this one's going to have to just be a shorter one. And then before I know it, I've waffled on to 27 minutes, 28 minutes and the like. So as I said at the start of the show, massive thank you to those of you that listen, that watch. I want to make this podcast and video series all about you. So if you've got any questions, if you've got any topics, if you've got any concerns, if you've got anything you want us to discuss, then of course, write in and let me know. There are plans to get guests on the podcast as well. So if you are a sales professional or a business owner and you want to maybe share some of your techniques, maybe share some funny stories, maybe share some good stories about some sales that you've made, I'd love to get you on into the studios to get you sat down and recorded. Please do hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, share it with some colleagues. If this has helped you increase your sales, share it. Sharing is caring after all. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. I can't remember what next week's all about, but I'm sure it's going to be a good one. Thank you so much for getting involved. And until next week, all the best. And that's it for another episode of the Sales Circle. Make sure you hit that follow button, join us over on social media, and we'll see you next week.